Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Around the Town with Chuck. My name is Chuck Guglielmo, a weekly interview show where we talk with interesting people. Last week we talked with Gene Winters of Sports Time Ohio, TV producer. We talked a lot about the network itself and the shows they offer. We talked a lot about announcers. This segment, we're going to talk strictly Cleveland Indians baseball. It's my favorite. I'm assuming it's probably your favorite. I mean, we all like the Cleveland teams, but they're probably my number one team.
Mine too, and that's, growing up throughout the 90s, I mean, when they were winning divisions, and not that I like them just because they were winning, but it helped. And the Browns being away and the Cavs kind of being that 7-8 seed every year. Baseball is what I gravitated to. Baseball is what I played, all the way growing up. So it was easily the love of mine, and it has stuck for the last 30 years.
Of course, Sports Time Ohio covers almost 160 games or so, except for the games that may be on national television.
Yeah, whatever ones ESPN picks, or even the national Fox window. I believe we have 58 of the 161 this year, 158 of them.
I see they got a couple of Sunday night games, both in April.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Back to back.
Yeah, right. Awfully early, which I thought was kind of strange too. You would think you would want to wait until summer actually kicks in around here, but
where you could have a better attendance for the national audience, because it can be cold, as you know.
Oh, absolutely. Back in the late 90s, we didn't care about that, but now, that cold prevents you from coming out.
Mm-hmm. Of course, you can catch Indians baseball on Sports Time Ohio with Matt Underwood and Rick Manning, and they've been together now how many years?
Since I think '02, so you're going on close to 20 years, 15 plus that they've been together.
Right. Gene, the question everybody wants to know is, and I'm going to ask you, what do you think? What do you think of their off season so far?
I think it's been a little slow. I mean, I didn't expect a lot of action, but I expected maybe a little bit more. I didn't expect Carlos Santana all of a sudden showing back up, Edwin Encarnacion going away. I assumed Andrew Miller was probably on his way out. I thought he was going to be a price tag that the Indians wouldn't match. I honestly thought Cody Allen would be back. I thought the Indians would have brought him back. I thought the same thing with Lonnie Chisenhall, who went off to the Pirates. But I think there has been more takeaways from the Indians than bringing back and improving the roster. The advantage, I guess, is playing in the weak AL Central this year. You can probably skate by, but it's nice to win the division, but you need to get back to winning playoff series, which the Indians have struggled with since going to Game 7 of the World Series.
Biggest takeaway, you think?
I think it's going to be those guys in the bullpen. I mean, bullpens are so finicky every single year, and you're hoping on a couple of young arms to step up. Yes, Brad Hand anchoring down the back is going to be huge. A guy that can give you multiple inning saves if those opportunities present themselves. But it's nice to have the Cody Allen, the Andrew Miller, some of those type guys, Brian Shaw from a couple of years ago, that you can plug in and rely on. Where here you're going to maybe be mix and matching, maybe for the first month, maybe even two. Alex Wilson is a nice guy that they brought in on a minor league contract.
From the Tigers.
Yeah. His strikeout rate's not as high as you'd like to see for a reliever, but he can get guys out. Tyler Clippard was a guy that they just brought in. He can get guys out, but again, he's a little bit older now too. But he could be that Oliver Perez type coming from the right side. Perez did a fantastic job for the Indians last year, so it's nice to have him back.
Yes.
Yeah. You'll see what Ramirez can do coming back from injury. I'm very interested to see what happens with Cody Anderson, a guy that was injured a lot last year, who had a fantastic year 2 seasons ago, getting a couple of spot starts for the Indians. I think he could maybe be that long reliever, take that Josh Tomlin role for the Indians if the Indians decide to go that way where they don't want him continuing to ramp up as a starter. I would have to check. I think he might be out of option, so you might be stuck getting him into that reliever spot too. And always the big question mark, which we've seen the last couple of years, is what are you going to get out of Danny Salazar? Are you going to get anything out of him? The Indians think so because they picked up his $5 million option, which I was kind of surprised about at the time when they did that. But he's another guy that's targeting May, June, maybe even July before coming back.
Really?
You're already that far into it. So can you really count on him to give you anything?
I was hoping he'd be that eighth inning pitcher.
Yeah, and this is a
I
debate
think
that
he can pitch one good solid inning.
right. And this is a debate Bruce and I had years ago when Salazar first, really made his presence on the scene. It was a day game we followed. He had a fantastic game. I want to say he went 6-7 innings, looked dominant. But in the back of my mind, you watched his stuff and you thought, this guy's a reliever. This guy could be your closer. This guy has the stuff to do it. I know Bruce and I went back and forth a number of times where I thought the Indians should have traded him to try to bring in a bat to help you out a little bit. But he proved me wrong for a good number of years before the injuries started to happen. But yeah, he's definitely a guy that you can get into the back end of your bullpen, a high 90s guy that can strike people out, has multiple pitches. But it's when you see him for a second time or a third time where he starts to get in trouble and he starts to outthink himself instead of just executing his pitches.
Gene, my biggest takeaway, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts, Yan Gomes. But I've had people tell me, yeah, he had a good year last year, but prior to that, his years weren't all that good. Are they right?
I go back and forth on Jan because, I remember back when we were down in Goodyear, and this was just after the Indians traded the Blue Jays and brought Yan Gomes in. He was far and away the best catcher that they had. This is when they were still trying to bounce Santana between catcher and first base and DH, and really we all knew at that point Santana was no longer a catcher. Yan Gomes was your catcher of the future. He was by far the best one that they had in camp that year, and the Indians sent him down to start in the minors because they didn't like the way he was receiving the ball. But all of a sudden he gets called up. Corey Kluber takes a liking to him. Carlos Carrasco likes throwing to him. Next thing you know, these guys are starting to get that relationship that you need to have with your catcher, where you don't really have to think when you're on the mound because you and the catcher are on the same page, where what he throws down, you're comfortable throwing it because both of you guys have gone through the scouting reports. You've went up and down the lineups to target the guys that you can to hit on. I think that's where you're going to miss him the most. Maybe not with the production with the bat, but I think with the way he can handle the pitchers, I think are what you're going to miss the most. I mean, Kluber has been a 2-time Cy Young Award winner with Yan Gomes catching him. Now you mix in Roberto Perez, who I don't know what happened last year. All of a sudden, he couldn't make the exchange anymore to throw guys out. He would always come up and the ball would slop out, or it would catch and he would drop it, and all of a sudden something just didn't click there. And I know Sandy Alomar is going to work with him a lot this spring and get him back up to it. But I think that was a place that you had a strength at catcher with Yan and with Roberto Perez. Now that maybe you turned into a weakness a little bit by getting rid of Yan Gomes.
Both those guys can throw runners out.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what Eric Haase has and the guy that they picked up that was the catcher for the Mets the last couple of years, how the three of them mesh in together. Pilecki, yeah. I was trying to think of it, yeah.
Yeah, Kevin, I think.
Kevin,
his
yes.
First name. Let's talk a little bit about Roberto Perez. Offensively, it was miserable for him last year. But I'm wondering, tremendous postseason hitter.
Right.
I'm wondering if he's probably going to play at least 4 or 5 games a week, if that may make a difference.
I think so, getting regular at-bats. And he was the guy that battled an injury early on last year, so trying to come back, and you had all the excitement of playing down in Puerto Rico and things like that last year that may have went against him. And then having such a bad start where you're playing catch-up all year long. And you know how it is early in April and even the first part of May when you're traveling around and you're not playing a lot and you see .081 as your batting average or 120, and you're trying to fight that and trying to just get up where you can get a couple of hits that then turn into outs or loud outs or whatever, and that batting average keeps dropping, and then you're battling that in your mind and you're having a hard time behind the plate receiving the ball or trying to throw guys out. I think it was just a perfect storm last year for him, where I think like you said, if you get 3-4 consistent days in a row where you know what, you're the number one option. You have to go out there and perform to stick. I think we might see a different Roberto Perez this year. But as you mentioned, a fantastic postseason player the last couple of years of the Indians. Yeah. Right. I mean, what was he, the first catcher in a number of years to have 2 home runs in one game, game 1 of the World Series back in 2016.
Amazing. Just amazing.
But it's always those guys that, the lesser tier guys you don't expect that always come out and, the lights shine and they just get out there and perform.
Does he sometimes make you feel like he's a little lazy behind the plate at times?
Yeah, and it kind of falls back to Carlos Santana, the way I felt about him too, where you know he's going to stop the ball and catch it, but you may get that lazy backhand, and next thing you know, it's scooting off to the backstop, or you may get that one over here where your mechanics just aren't right as you're trying to pop up to throw, and you get one of these lollipops that sail out into center field. I think there might have been a focus issue last year that I hope will be corrected for sure this year.
Catching department, though, even though Yan Gomes is gone, it's not one of their weak points. Let's put it that way.
Right, and
I don't believe it to be.
Yeah, and yes, Yan Gomes was an all-star last year and had a great year, but it took 4 guys to back out before he became an all-star. But you could have made the case that he did have a better year than Gary Sanchez of New York, who always got the pub, or whomever you want to throw in there. But yeah, Yan Gomes did have a very good year last year. But it's time to I don't want to say get rid of guys before you get attached to them like we did in the '90s, but it might have been the right time to see what Roberto Perez might have, or some of the other guys that you're going to try to pump in through the minors to get them their opportunity to go out there and shine for sure.
Let's move over to the first base position now. We've got Jake Bauers, we've got Carlos Santana, the 2 main guys that can play first base. Do you see Santana getting the bulk of the work?
I would think so. I think you're going to see Santana bounce from first to DH. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him in the outfield a couple of times as well. Hide him out in left field, depending on what the Indians want to do with that, and I'm sure we'll address it here shortly. But where they stand with the outfield right now, you may have to plug him in there a couple of games. I know Bauers played a little bit of the outfield last year, but he's a first baseman. Mm-hmm. He's a first baseman DH. That really the first 2-3 weeks when he was first called up by Tampa Bay had a fantastic start to his baseball career, then never made that adjustment to the pitchers that made the adjustment against him. So maybe a change of scenery for him, being a young 25, 26-year-old, it only bodes well for the Indians, a guy that they can control for a number of years. But I do like Bauers. Santana, again, me personally, I seen enough the first time around. Like, I wasn't real thrilled with him coming back, but I understand it. With Lindor possibly being out for a little bit, you're going to need a leadoff hitter. We know Santana can do that. In a pinch, Santana can play third base. I didn't realize it until they made the trade. He played over 20 games at third base for Philly last year.
Oh, he did.
When Philly started to make their moves to try to make their final playoff push. When they went out and they grabbed the guy from the Marlins, and they ended up grabbing 2 first basemen. They moved Santana to third. He played 20 games there, and there was a great article in the Philadelphia Inquirer after the season that talked about Santana playing third base for them this coming year before they eventually moved him. But it had quotes from Mike Sarball talking about when they experimented with that in 13 or 14, whatever year that was, which didn't work for the Indians. But in a pinch, you might have a versatile player that could go from first to third to left field to DH. So
and Terry likes versatile
absolutely
players.
So and again, we know what we're going to expect from Santana. I think I had higher hopes for him, and I think that's where some of my disappointment came in. Where you're getting this top prospect from the Dodgers at the time back in '08, whenever you made the trade for Casey Blake, where I was expecting a little bit more from him, and maybe he didn't live up to my expectations, and I always held it against him.
You mean batting average wise?
Both batting average. Maybe I thought he was going to be a better receiver behind the plate. But I thought when he moved to first base, he was phenomenal.
I thought he did good defensively.
Yes,
yeah.
He stopped everything that was coming his way.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to get a little bit more.
Yeah, on some of the high throws, but outside of that,
yes,
he's pretty good defensively.
Yeah, and again, you're going to get a 260 hitter. You're going to get 20 plus home runs. You're going to get close to 100 runs batted in. You're going to get over 100 walks. So on base percentage is huge for the Indians, and that's something they look for. So Santana is the perfect fit for that for sure.
Jake Bauers, you talked about, is he left-handed?
He is left, yes.
Left-handed.
Yeah, so another, the Indians usually find a stable of left-handed batters to put in there. So, yeah, he is left-handed stick, yes.
So when the 2 of them are probably going to be your main designated hitters as well, does that compensate for Edwin Encarnacion? Before I ask that question, now, Edwin Encarnacion, I get in a debate sometimes at work like this. Yes, he had his 100 RBIs, he had his 30 or plus home runs, but to me, How many of those were game changers?
Right. Not many. There were a lot of times where, he'd have these 2 home run games. It would be a 8-1 blowout where the Indians were leading, or vice versa, where we'd have 1 or 2 where you didn't have that signature moment for him. And we know he wasn't that great in the field. They threw him a handful of games at first base, but for what the Indians wanted and the way they'll spin it too is, he was just as advertised. He hit 250, 260. He had his 35 homers, over 100 runs batted in. It was exactly what we expected from him. But, he put together a fantastic 5-7 year mix from the time he left to Toronto to his first couple of years here. But I definitely see your point where, of his, let's just say 35 home runs, maybe 5, were impact game changers, something that you needed at the time, not garbage time home runs.
When they signed him a few years ago around Christmas time,
Yeah.
I was telling my wife, "This is the best Christmas present I have." That's who we
Yes,
need. We
right.
needed an Edwin Encarnacion. Then when I heard they traded him, I wasn't thrilled, but I wasn't really disappointed either.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, you're saving a little bit of money by getting rid of him and getting a comparable player back in return. But I was kind of the same way. The excitement that I have. I remember I was coming back from Florida and, phone off, we're in the air, second I land, all of a sudden text messages, emails, phone call messages all of a sudden pop up, and I'm thinking, what went on? It's like December 27th or something. Like, nothing's going on here. What? And then you start to see, and it's like, wow, the Indians went out and they're bringing in a guy and paying him over $20 million a year. Maybe this is where the tide starts to turn. And but yeah, it was kind of a surprise. And because that year it was, well, they're going to go out and get Jose Bautista, his teammate in Toronto. That's the guy that they're going to go out and sign, and they're going to bring him in. And next thing you know, it's
Joey Bats.
Yes, Encarnacion is the one that's here and doing his thing.
Yeah. Let's move over to second base.
Yep.
Jason Kipnis is back. The last 2 years we've heard nothing but he's not going to be back.
Right.
But he's back. He did not have the greatest of seasons last year. I still think he's a lot of people's favorite player, even though people don't want to admit that. I'm a Jason Kipnis fan. I don't like him in the outfield, though. And I did read the other day where he is going to play second base.
Yes.
Your thoughts on Jason Kipnis?
I kind of go the same way. I like him. I mean, he's 2-time All-Star. He's a guy that I think last year started off a little slow and just never caught up, had to battle a couple of injuries, and really never had that, I think, breakout season that he was hoping for. And then unfortunately for him, the fans losing Brian Shaw, I think Jason Kipnis became that guy that people like to beat on a little bit. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, he's a guy that could bounce to the outfield in a pinch if you need it. I don't prefer him out there. I do think Jose Ramirez would be a better second baseman, but I think there's a lot that Jason Kipnis still wants to prove. Being still a guy that is 28, 29, maybe 30. I mean, he's still younger. So he's a guy that wants to live up to the contract that the Indians awarded him a couple years ago. He's a guy that can still put up numbers. And I think if you look at the final 2.5, 3 months of last year, that's where Jason Kipnis started to really put it together. Now the batting average at the end of the year is still going to say 240, but if you look at just that 2.5, 3 month span, he started to put numbers together. He started to get memorable hits. He started to hit with power again, played okay defensively, and then started bouncing between the outfield and second base. But I think this is a guy that I'm kind of going in with the same hopes that I had for him last year, where this could be the year where if he puts together a hot start coming out of April, that will only springboard him for the rest of the year.
He needs that hot start.
Yes.
He's very capable of hitting 275.
Absolutely. Right, and he'll give you 15, 20 homers. He'll have over 60 runs batted in. He's a guy that still has some speed.
Better than average defense.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, he's a guy that can then set the table. It'll depend on where they hit him in the lineup. And I'm interested now, without Brantley, with Lindor possibly missing the beginning of the year, how are you going to shuffle, 1 through 3? Who's going to obviously be your cleanup hitter? I don't think you could put Santana there, but now, Kipnis is not that guy, but is he going to be one of your top 3, or is he going to be one of your bottom 3 in the lineup?
Yeah, that's the good question. Now, of course, in the postseason, Kipnis played center field.
Yes.
This year.
Yep.
Was it center field all 3 years?
It was.
Postseason?
Yeah, I think he played a little bit of it in the 16 year as well.
I thought he
but
did.
yeah, mainly 17 and 18 for sure out in the outfield.
My question was, Gene, maybe you can help me out on this. Why center and not left?
Michael Brantley. I think that was the easy
Well,
one,
Brantley
at least for
wasn't there in
last year.
2016,
Right.
yeah.
And the year prior to that, you hit Santana out there a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So, especially in the National League Park when you made the World Series.
Was
you tried that.
Ramirez out there in 2016 as well? Didn't Jose Ramirez play a year in left field?
It
When
was the
Brantley
year.
was out?
It was the year before Lindor came up. So it was the year that Ramirez started the year as shortstop, and everyone just ragged on him and beat him down because he wasn't Lindor.
Yeah.
And then he was sent down, and when he came back up, played a little bit in the outfield, a little bit at third, a little bit at second, tried to bounce around that utility player. And then it was that off season where the Indians were like, concentrate on third base, and this is where we'll put you, even though you're a better second baseman than anything that you can do. But yeah, he bounced around a little bit, and I'm trying to think. There was another outfielder too that they used, but yeah, it was Santana was hitting out there for a little bit. Who was out there? You had it will come to me.
In center field?
Just in your outfield in 16 altogether, because as you mentioned, Brantley was out.
Chizzy
You
was
had
out
Chisenhall,
too, right?
you're right? Yes.
Naquin?
Naquin, yes, because he was playing center. Yes, that's right, because he was the one that in Game 7 missed a couple of those. It might have been Game 6, a couple of those fly balls that looked like routine
I can
outs.
still see him.
Yeah, yeah, and that was the worst part because I was standing up on the home run porch, above the right field, the bar patio, whatever you want to call it, and you could just see the ball coming in and looking like, wait, the ball's here, he's over here. Wait a minute, what? And then,
As much as you and I love that game, it can drive you nuts.
oh yeah, just
It could
thinking
really
back to
drive
it,
you
yes.
nuts.
And it was funny because I was just talking to someone about it. It might have been yesterday or 2 days ago. Just the rain delay and how that all factored in, and Rajay's home run and all the excitement that was in there, and
took
then
the momentum
the
right
10
away,
second
that
rain
rain.
or 10-minute rain delay totally just wiped everything right out.
It was like the Cubs were able to regroup.
You're right, yeah. Then you've heard afterward, the locker room speech that Hayward gave that really turned it around, and yeah.
Who goes to second base when Kipnis needs a breather?
I would like to say Ramirez, but I don't think they're going to bounce him around. I think they're going to let him concentrate. And Ramirez mentioned this last year, where he doesn't want to bounce between positions. Put me somewhere, and if you move me there, then I want to stay there till the end. I mean, maybe Matt Joyce plays a little bit there,
Yeah,
but he's
another
more
new
of
pickup.
an outfielder
Got a
too.
little power.
Yeah, right. Maybe he takes a couple of blows there. You don't have Eric Gonzalez no more, as he went off to Pittsburgh. You might have one of these guys that maybe from your minors that just come up and take one of those utility roles. But
For second base.
where you could play him second, short, maybe
Yeah.
third if you need a blow there. But I think Joyce could fill that spot. I mean, you may have to find a shortstop to play until Lindor's ready, and it might be 1 week, it may be a month. We'll see. I know everyone keeps saying that he's well ahead, and that 8 to 12 weeks was too big of a window, that he'll probably be back before that. But again, until I see him on the field,
Yeah.
I'm going to plan for being without him for 12 weeks.
This is why I don't like to write things down, Gene. I'm trying to look for the guy, but I can't find him right now. Lindor.
Yeah.
Initial report was 7 to 9 weeks, so I heard Fred Kona said bet on the 7.
Right, and that that's it. And it's good to say he's down there doing a little bit, walking around, doing his thing down there. But until I see him on the field, that I'm gonna think of 9 or 12 or whatever the case may be. I just want to see him out there. And the disadvantage of missing the entire spring training is now if you just give him a couple of minor league games and plug him in, all of April may be his spring training. And now he may not hit his stride until May. And now you're behind the 8 ball, or you're
another
behind.
good point.
The good part is you're in a bad division. So, you might be able to get away with it. But if he's trying to learn and get himself back and get his timing down, and you're in the middle of April, it may take a little bit. And then kind of like we talked about with Roberto Perez, where if Lindor sees a 100 batting average up there, is he going to try and press a little bit harder? And next thing you know, he's digging himself a bigger hole and maybe trying to do a little too much too early and not be the Lindor that we have grown to love the last couple of years.
Of course, Lindor led off quite a bit. Would you have an issue with him batting fourth?
Oh, probably.
Okay.
Because again, I know he's had the power numbers and 30 plus home runs last year, but I still see him as a 20 home run guy. Like I don't. Yes, it's nice to get 30 home runs out of your shortstop position, but I don't see him in that right. I don't see him in that role. Like I see him more as that 50 doubles, 60 doubles guy, 20 home runs. He'll still get 80, 90 runs batted in. Not to, I'll use this analogy. Not that this is what I'm thinking, but in the movie Major League, Willie Mays all of a sudden went from the slapping the ball and getting on base to a guy that was trying to hit home runs too much. Where the easy swing, the not trying to hit home runs is where you're going to produce those. Where I think if you get in that mindset of I'm the 4-hole hitter, I have to hit for power and not for average, or hit for the gaps. I think that could be a factor as well. I'd rather see him at probably number 2. I think Santana is going to be your leadoff guy, and Ramirez is going to be in at 3. And you just slide, where you slide Ramirez down into that Michael Brantley role. Ramirez could probably be a 4-hitter for you and put Lindor at 3, but usually you like your best hitter being in that 3 spot.
3 spot, yeah. Let's move over to third base. Of course, Jose Ramirez.
Yeah.
Third, second. He goes back and forth. He's good no matter where you have him.
Right.
But I'd like having him at third base.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Get him in that mindset. This is your position. Just concentrate on here, and we'll address second base or wherever at a future date or a future time. Even though you are a better second baseman than you are third, you've molded yourself into an all-star third baseman by the practice and determination and everything that you've done.
That.
Right,
I
exactly.
wouldn't have thought he was that kind of a player.
Yes. Especially, going back to the 14 year when he was the beating boy because everybody wanted Lindor. Yeah. It was, this guy's nothing. He's never going to make it. Just get rid of him, bring up Lindor, and just push this guy off to the side.
Just a tremendous offensive talent. The last couple years, he's kind of struggled in the last month or so of the season. This year, a little bit more extensive.
Yes.
Well, do you think it's the home run ball that
I think that was
hard for that?
He had 38, 39, and he was there, and it was, I got to get to 40. That's going to be the number I want to get to, and then it started to turn into long outs or hard hit outs, and it just never came. And then that batting average started to dwindle down. Even though he had it up pretty high, it started to come down, because I think he was trying so hard to get that 40th home run that it took him out of his game, where he was just concentrating on power instead of being the hitter that got him to that point, being the starting third baseman in the All-Star game, or the guy that he's been the last 3 years now, being that kind of hitter, where I think it got into his mind of, I need to hit this one out. I need to get this one going, and it turned into outs instead of productive hits.
Gene, who do you want at the plate in the bottom of the 9th inning with a runner at second base as your winning run, 2 out? Jose Ramirez or Francisco Lindor? Or somebody else?
Definitely not somebody else. I think those are the two. I think Santana would be like on my fringe, but I think he'd be up there more looking for a walk instead of getting a hit. Now that I'm back into that situation of waiting for someone to make that hit. But I would probably say Lindor would be the guy that I would want at the plate, just because he can get it all, slap it all over the field. Not to say that Ramirez can't. I think I would just be more comfortable with Lindor being that guy up there at that clutch moment.
I agree with you too. Just that in that 22-game winning streak when he extended it with that double off the ball. It's not very easy to get a ball behind Alex Gordon.
Right.
I mean, he's one of the tremendous outfielders. Still is.
No, absolutely. And a guy that struggled as a third baseman, a guy that, kind of was like Lonnie Chisenhall. You had high hopes for him, a top draft pick. I think he was number 1 overall. Chisenhall was like 8 or 9. A guy that, just couldn't make it as a third baseman. You set him down to the minors for a little bit, get him out in the outfield. Next thing you know, it's a rebirth of his career. He turns into an all-star. And I think Chisenhall was on that path the last couple of years where injuries, unfortunately, before the all-star break, knocked him out. And now, obviously, we'll see what he does with the Pirates.
Mm-hmm. Mike Moustakas, the last couple of years, seemed for a cheap price. I think $5 million last year with the Brewers.
Yeah.
Were you ever interested in getting him and move Ramirez to second?
Absolutely. I mean, then it goes back to, you talked a little bit about Jason Kipnis being in the rumors the last 2-3 years, and then you break camp, and he's your second baseman. I think that could have been a guy that has the power numbers. Again, another left-handed stick, so, with the way the lineup's been the last couple of years. But again, I'm not one to turn down
Right.
25 home runs and close to 80 runs batted in, and especially at a $5 million price tag. Now he's back with the Brewers again, another 1-year deal. But absolutely, he could have easily taken third base for you. You move Ramirez over, and then you're either forced to trade Kipnis or work him as an outfielder, maybe a utility guy that would spell Ramirez here or there. But absolutely, a guy that we've seen so much the last couple of years, being in the division. You see the Royals 18 times a year, was a big piece to their championship or back-to-back World Series, one being a championship year with Hosmer and Gordon, as you mentioned. I mean, he was one of the big pieces for those teams, and a guy that is still somewhat on the younger side, in his lower 30s, but a guy that can still hit the ball for sure, and is a very good third baseman.
Wasn't he a real good close friend with Bruce? Golfing buddies or something?
Billy Butler.
Oh, Billy Butler.
Billy
That's
Butler
who it
was the one, yes.
Yes.
Him and Jeff Francoeur, who later was a minor league invitee for
Spent
the
some
Indians.
time with the Tribe, yeah.
Yes, he didn't make it, but
Billy Butler.
he's actually doing
Is he in
Francoeur.
baseball?
No,
He's
I don't
out.
think he's doing any. I don't think managing nothing. He had 2 or 3 very young, beautiful girls. So I think is taking some family time the last couple of years. I know last year, 2 years ago, he tried to get back in. I think he was in the Yankees minor league system, but it never resulted in anything. And I think he just stepped away for a little bit.
Let's go to the outfield now, Gene. Leonis Martin.
Yeah.
Is he your leadoff hitter?
He could be. I think he's more of your 9 to turn the lineup back over, but I think he could easily step into that be that leadoff hitter for sure. He's going to start in the outfield. Near-death experience last year with that bacterial infection after the Indians made the trade for him from the Tigers. But he could easily be your leadoff. I think I would prefer him more at that 9 to turn that roster to turn that lineup, over a little bit. But he could easily slide in that spot. And he's going to be your starting center fielder. As long as he's healthy enough to play, he's going to be the one out there, because Bradley Zimmer's not going to be back till June or July, so you can't count on him. We'll see if Naquin takes any center field reps. He'll probably be your right fielder for the most part this year with Chisenhall being out, and obviously he was the guy last year to fill in for Chisenhall for most of the year.
So where does that leave somebody like a Greg Allen, who had a pretty good year?
Right, and that's going to be the hard part now for the Indians, because Greg Allen is fast. He's a center fielder by trade. Can you plug him into one of those corner outfield spots and try to get away with it and go with more speed? But are Martin and Greg Allen too similar of players to have both in your lineup and both on your roster? Because they're both guys that have speed. They're not going to have a lot of home runs. They're both going to get on base and disrupt by stealing. But are they too similar of players to keep both of them on your roster? I think that's going to be the question that the Indians have, because they're both probably low teens for home runs. I mean, is that enough to get from a left fielder and a center field? Having only 20 home runs from 2 of your outfield positions, I don't know if that's going to be enough to keep him around.
What do you know about the new guy, Luplo, from the Pirates?
He looks like he's going to be a guy. I mean, it looks like a guy that's definitely going to be in that mix for that starting right field spot. I probably won't see him in left. I think he's more of a right fielder, a guy that has some power, a guy that unfortunately for the Pirates has been stuck in a logjam. I mean, when you go from Andrew McCutchen to Sterling Marte to I can't think of the other outfielder. They had a good batch of young outfielders all coming up at the same time, where I think he kind of got lost in that mix. And now with McCutchen going back with the Phillies after the Pirates traded him away to San Francisco last year, you still kind of had that log jam there. So I think it was easy to say, you know what, change the scenery. Let's let him go. We'll pick up a guy like Chisenhall to plug him in to go with our stable of outfielders as well. But a right-handed stick, which you need. So I think that's going to bode well for him. to be plugged into that right field spot and given the opportunity to show the Indians and Francona what he can do.
I get the feeling that we may just see different outfielders every game.
Absolutely. Just keep plugging them in. As
Until
you mentioned,
see what
versatile
works.
guys, see which guys perform well at each position.
Yeah.
And this might be the year where your starting rotation is going to give you innings, or at least on paper you think they're going to give you innings. And we know how much Terry Francona loves his bullpen guys, but maybe this is the beginning of the year where you start with one less bullpen guy to have that extra outfielder so you can mix and match and try guys at different spots to see which ones are going to stick.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned the pitching. Let's go to the starting pitching right now. Probably the strongest on the Indians,
Yeah.
the strongest part of the game. As a matter of fact, maybe the strongest starting rotation in the American League, if not all of baseball. You've mentioned Corey Kluber, two-time Cy Young
Yep.
Award winner, won 20 games for the first time last year.
Right.
Not an easy thing to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Although some people will point out that 13 of those wins came against the Central Division.
Right. Well, and then they'll point out the postseason that he struggled in the last 2 years. But yeah, for what he's been able to accomplish, a guy that the Indians traded for back in 2000 in a three-way trade with the Padres and the Cardinals when they sent out Jake Westbrook, bringing in a young kid, a double-A guy. And for what Kluber has been able to do to mold himself into a professional pitcher, to be able to be kind of a mentor for some of the younger guys on the team, a guy that has multiple Cy Youngs and has been in the mix the last couple of years. Unfortunately for him, that postseason of 16, I think might have, I don't want to say damaged him, but turned him a little bit because he's been able to put together fantastic regular seasons, but once he gets into that postseason, there's just something there that hasn't clicked since that World Series. And I know he was obviously a big trade rumor guy this year, but I think with the moves that the Indians made offensively, you have to keep those 5 starting pitchers intact because you can win a couple of 2-1, 3-1 ball games with this pitching staff that you have assembled.
Is it safe to say we can pencil in Kluber, barring injury, for at least 15 wins?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep, I see nothing to go. I'm going to be, the one thing that I am going to be interested in early is how he throws to Roberto Perez or whichever catcher may, because it's been Yan Gomes consistently for the last 3 or 4
Right,
years.
that'll be something to
So
watch,
that's
too.
what I want to see first. But, with that talent, with that arm, with his pitches, you're going to get 15 and 200 innings plus, for sure.
Number 2 pitcher, I'm putting, maybe
Yeah.
not this order, but usually it would be Carlos Carrasco, but I'm wondering if Trevor Bauer moves into the 2 hole.
Right, and Bauer had a fantastic year last year.
Outstanding season.
Yeah, could have maybe made a case for Cy Young.
Oh,
if he would have
easily.
stayed healthy, he might have been able to take that role over Blake
Easily.
Snell, a guy that came on late. So the injury everything looks perfectly fine for Trevor. Has been pitching well. I know Francona mentioned with Kluber, Carrasco, and I think Clevenger. They're going to work a couple of simulated games early on, get their pitch counts up to 50 or so before they see regular game action. Obviously, Bauer, with what he does to his body, the analytics, the everything that goes into how his arm and his body works, he's going to be pitching right away. And that's the way it should be. The guy knows himself better than anybody. All the tape that he watches, all the different mechanics and everything that he works on to get his arm and body into shape, you just plug him in and let him go. And I'm interested to see, by being snubbed last year, I don't want to say snubbed, but getting injured last year, taking himself out of the Cy Young race, if he comes back with a little bit different mindset this year and goes out and even does better than where he was at last year.
No reason we can't pencil him for 15.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. I think 20 is, I would
We're
expect
going the
at least
low
18.
end, though. There's
Yeah.
30 wins right there.
Sure.
Now you go to Carlos Carrasco. If he could stay away from injury, the last 2 years he's taken some pretty serious
Yes.
injuries and bounced back pretty quickly. Carlos Carrasco, when he is on, he's unhittable.
Right, and it took maybe a little bit longer than people would have liked after making the trade with the Phillies for Cliff Lee back in 08, 09, whatever year that was. Carrasco was one of those pieces that came over, and I think a lot of people were expecting instant results for him early, and it was really that bullpen stint that Mickey Callaway and the Indians had with him. I think when Manny Acta was still here, they sent him out to the bullpen, let him rework on his mechanics, let him clear his mind, and once they plugged him back into the rotation, the guy has been fantastic for 3 or 4 straight years now. And as you mentioned, another guy you could easily pencil in for about 15 wins. Health-wise,
Easily.
it's always and it's something with those comebackers for him that nick off an arm or hit him in the thigh or something to knock him out for a month, and then he has to ramp it back up to get back into it. But
What Central Division team that's always hitting him? Is it the hitting him?
the Tigers hit him, and the White Sox
and the
hit
Twins,
him.
I
Yeah,
think, too, this year.
right. They all take their turns to knock him
This
out
is
of
the
the
Royals'
rotation.
turn. Hopefully it won't
Yeah,
be,
right,
but-
right. But yeah, he's easily a guy that has come a long way from more of a mental standpoint, I think, which was blocking him early to get that all cleared up here, and then you're able to see the pitching results come after.
Okay. Now I have to eat a little crow here.
Okay.
On my next pitcher, because I didn't really think much of him, but now I do, and I'm glad to eat crow because that means they're doing well.
Yes.
And that's Mike Clevenger. He really came on big time too.
Yeah, and
another one of the 200 strikeout pitchers.
right, and to have 4 of them last year is just amazing. The first time in baseball history to have 4 guys with that kind of with those kind of numbers, but. He's a guy, you make a trade. I think it was Vinny Pastano that the Indians traded away to bring him in. And I think the one thing that has worked well for Clevenger is his relationship with Trevor Bauer. And those two
They get along.
get
well.
along fantastic. And it was Bauer last year.
Not easy to get along with Bauer.
Exactly. And it was Bauer that helped Mike Clevenger throughout the year last year work on his changeup, work on his curveball, the mechanics of pitching, where Trevor Bauer watches everything and analyzes it. He would go into the tape room, the Indians video room, on days when Mike Clevenger pitched, and they would talk in between innings and say, you know what, a little more snap here, a little bit more of this, a little bit, you're drifting this way, let's fix that. And I think it was a game against the White Sox, he ended up with 10 strikeouts in a game because of the tweaking that they were doing between the game. And it's just the mindset of Trevor Bauer, the willingness of Mike Clevenger. I mean, those two
Yeah.
together,
Oh, yeah.
it could only, the sky's the limit for both of them.
Let's go 12 with Clevenger. So that brings
Sure.
us to 57.
Okay.
Now we got Shane Bieber.
Right.
Of course, as Bruce will tell you, leagues seem to make adjustments.
Yes.
Any concerns with Bieber coming into the year?
A little bit. And he's a guy that I thought maybe would be a trade piece this offseason. I know everyone mentioned Bauer and Kluber as the big ones to get a lot in return back, but I thought Bieber might have been a guy, Plutko, who's going to start their first spring training game. I think he could be in that mix, but I like Bieber a little bit more taking over that 5th spot. And again, if you can get 8 wins out of a 5th starter, keep you in some games where, give me 5, maybe 6 innings at the most. If you can give me that for, let's just say 20 starts, 15 even, I'll take that. And you can then mix match a couple of guys here and there or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I think Bieber did enough last year when he was given the opportunity to where he deserves that 5th spot now, and let him go out and show it.
I'm going to go 10 on Bieber. So there's
I'll take it.
67
Okay.
wins on paper.
Right.
And we know how that works.
Sure.
Just from your starters.
Right.
And then if somebody was to get hurt, you mentioned Cody Anderson, maybe a possibility.
Sure.
Maybe a Danny Salazar late in the season. You talked about
Right.
Adam Plutko.
Plutko, yep.
Is it Plutko or Plutko?
Plutko.
Plutko.
Yep.
But it's P-O-U,
But
right?
yes.
Yeah. So they do got some, and then there's this pitcher down there, McKenzie.
McKenzie, yes.
He looks like he could be coming up soon too, doesn't
Right,
he?
and he should start at AAA this year. They might, depending on how it falls, maybe give him a couple innings or a month or so down at AA again. But he's definitely a AAA pitcher knocking at the door for his opportunity to come up and shine. And maybe the Indians can use him as kind of like that David Price role back in 2008 when the Rays kind of bounced him up as starter, reliever, and then when they made their postseason run, Price was coming out of the bullpen and then turned into a dominant starter the next year. Maybe you could do that same kind of thing with McKenzie, but it's nice to have those options. I mean, how many years have we seen it with the Indians where you don't have that pitching depth and you're just hoping 5 starters can get by, or maybe a 6th guy, and then you have a bunch of question marks after that. At least you have maybe not as many questions, maybe more concrete evidence of these guys being able to just step in and perform. And I'm sure the Indians are still going to go out and try to find even more arms to bring in here and supplement in case they need somebody.
3 more quick things, Gene, because I know you got to get going. Bobby Bradley, any possibility of seeing the big, powerful first baseman in the near future?
I think more of next year. I think they'll give him close to a full year at AAA this year and hope that he performs. Now, I would flip that, if Bowers wasn't here, if Jake Bowers, the guy that they brought in from Tampa Bay, if he wasn't here, I think you would have a better shot of seeing Bradley this year. Now again, if Bowers struggles though, you may need that kind of stick in Bobby Bradley, but I think they're going to want to see him for a good bit of time at AAA before making a decision like that, seeing what he can do on that level, because he's been able to hit at every single level he's been at. We know he's going to be a big home run guy.
Bulky guy.
You're right, 25, 26 years old, but he's put up numbers, 20-plus home runs everywhere. He's been at 30-plus home runs. So I think give him a little seasoning at AAA, and then you might be able to see him. But I would, if I'm the Indians, I'm thinking more of a next year
2020
for him, yes.
Saw him also at Tribe Fest.
Okay.
A couple times you mentioned about the division they're in being weak.
Yeah.
Although it looks like the Twins might be they may be interesting, although they got 13 games to make up on the Indians. Maybe
Right.
it's 17, I can't remember.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It started to
But they've
expand
added
out.
some punch to that Twins line. They've always been a good hitting team.
Right. And they're like that pesky team too, where you think you got them away, and next thing you know they battle back.
They win here and we win there.
Exactly. Right.
Figure that one out.
Yes, and I think their lineup's going to be a lot better than people think. I think it's going to be their pitching that's going to hold them down again. I thought for sure Cody Allen was going to Minnesota to be their closer before he signed his deal with
don't tell
the
me that.
Angels. But yeah, that's what I thought. But will this be
Barrios.
the year that Sano finally puts it all together? Are we going to see Braxton be healthy enough to play, or Buxton, yes, to play center field? Are some of these guys going to be able to come out and perform? As you mentioned, Barrios, Irvin Santana. I mean, they still have question marks in that pitching staff, but they should have enough offensively to go out. And for Nelson Cruz, I mean, the guy has put up 30-plus homers for so many years as a DH.
Who's the second baseman they got? Was it Kinsler? Seems like they picked up a second baseman.
Yes, they did.
They used to have the home run hitter there. Oh, I can't think of his name. He went out west.
Yeah.
You know who I'm thinking of the Twins.
Yes.
The home run. I can't think of his name right now. He went to the Dodgers.
Dozier. Brian Dozier.
Brian Dozier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just could have drawn a blank.
Yes, and that's another team that has struggled for so many years, having a lot of number one or high draft picks that they're waiting to see. Are you guys going to come out and perform, or are we going to have to chalk you up as a bust or a 4A player? So, I thought Paul Molitor for the longest time had them going in the right direction. Obviously, they've parted ways with him, so we'll see what the Twins have in store this year. The thing that I'm most thrilled about would be the White Sox missing out on Manny Machado. I mean, for so long, there was talks that he was going to go there, and for 2 years in a row now, the key piece, Yonder Alonso, has failed to bring Manny Machado to whatever team he was on. I mean, there was talks last year that the Indians were going to do it this offseason. The White Sox were going to do it, even though the White Sox offered more money per year. The guaranteed money was what Machado went for. And the White Sox could be that team in the coming years. They have, again, that good young pitching staff that got a lot of experience last year, that got beat up a lot, kind of like, what was that, 05, 06. Yeah.
He gives the Indians fits.
Yeah. Right, another lefty, and they have a good batch of lefties that they throw out there as well. So the White Sox could be that team coming up in the near future to be worried about.
All right, tell me who made out the schedule this year. The Indians' first 12 games are in Minneapolis, Cleveland, and Detroit.
Right.
Three of the coldest cities I could think of.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe the people thought that or forgot that the Twins no longer play in a dome, that they actually play outside now. Yeah, I was thinking that same exact thing. Like, oh, here we go. Why not start in Oakland or on a West Coast trip like they did last year, or down in Tampa, or some of these places that have domes? I mean, that should be like the written rule. Until April 15th, you cannot come west, or you cannot play in a place without a dome, and then start your home portion of the season after that.
Get some Indians replays ready.
Yeah, right.
But you know what I like better? I like when they stay at the ballpark, and I like to hear the announcers talk.
Sure.
I like that better than the replays. I really do. I know they probably don't
right.
like it.
Get a little time off, quick break, and yes.
Yeah. Well, Gene, this has been fun. I really appreciate you coming in.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
All the way. You're Perry Pirate guy?
Yes. Yeah. So we're on Perry now. So
boys and girls are still in the tournaments. They're in high school. Or?
Yes. The boys have a couple of home games coming up. The girls are going to be out here in Lakeside soon enough for their portion of the bracket. But they have a tough one. They have the defending Division II, either champion or runner-up in Gilmore Academy that they're going to have to get through. But the Pirates put together, the ladies did a 18-4 season, third straight CVC champion. So they should be primed to make a pretty good run. They're only going to lose 2 seniors, so they should be in a good position next year. And the boys, after having a lot of close wins last year, which resulted in losses, have turned it around to be at least co-share of the CVC championship. So they'll be the 4 seed in the Lakeside coming up as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Gene.
Anytime.
It's been my pleasure.
No, thank you.
And Gene Winters, producer of Sports Time Ohio, and a knowledge, as you could tell, of Cleveland Indians baseball, my guest.